power is about appearances. You're missing these signals that people are giving out in your conversation. You're always appearing the same. They're going to get bored with you, and they're going to look for something else. So, you have to be. People have patterns of behavior. Nobody ever does anything once. Look at the little signs that people give off. If someone is habitually late, I'm trying to tell you that you don't understand the people that you're dealing with. You really don't know who they are. You're walking around thinking that you know your wife or your husband, your children, your boss, your friends, but you really don't have a clue. You don't understand their experience. You don't really know what they think of you actually, as well. Most of the time you're projecting onto them your own images. Let's say, you had particularly bad relationship with your father or your mother, and you don't like people in authority because of the relationship to your father. And so you meet somebody who's powerful, who has authority, and you hate them. You have a bad instant reaction because you're projecting onto them some image from your own childhood. So, you don't see the people that are in front of you. You're not seeing them. You're not understanding them. And what happens when you operate in darkness? When you operate without knowledge, you make mistakes. You say something very stupid that offends the other person. You don't even realize that you've offended them, and weeks later you notice that they're kind of cold, and they're not responding to your texts and your emails. You have no idea why, because you probably did offend them in some way, because you don't know who they are. You don't know their experience. You don't know what's going on inside of them, or what their likes and aversions are. So, if you stop for a moment and tell yourself, damn, I don't know that what the people around me are really thinking about me. It's a startling revelation, and you're going to want to change that. So, what I'm trying to say is that people have a character, and that what I mean by that is it's their core, it's who they are, it's something very deep. It comes from their DNA, there's a genetic component. It comes from their early childhood and the kind of attachment they had to their parents. It comes from their early experiences with friends and teachers and at school, and it makes them who they are. And their character tends to be revealed in certain things that you must pay attention to. And the reason it's so important is you want to be able to judge people by their character. You want to know what runs them from deep, deep within. Because if you don't, if you make a mistake, you will hire them as a business partner. You'll get involved in a relationship, and it will be a disaster. Because you didn't see that actually they have very negative patterns, and they only come out later. So, I want you to be able to look at the people you're dealing with and literally see their character. And I give you some clues and tips on how to do that. First of all, people have patterns of behavior. Nobody ever does anything once. So, let's say if somebody sent you an angry email that offended you, and then they go, oh, I'm sorry, but that's not who I was. Something came over me. I'm not that person. You will probably accept that, but the truth is, they never did that once. It's a pattern. They've done it many times. If they've screwed you, in some way, they've screwed 10 other people in their past. You want people's patterns of behavior, the kind of compulsive element in them. Okay, that'll show you something very deep in their core. You also want to look at them in the moments where their guard is down. We all wear masks. We all try to present ourselves as being noble and great, but the mask comes down in certain elements. So, you want to look at how they treat their children, their spouse, their employees. They might be nice to you because they want something out of you. But when their back is turned and they're talking to other people, they're the biggest raging around. That gives you signs of what they're trying to disguise this from you. But in the little details of life, they kind of reveal who they are. You want to see how they react under pressure. People under pressure reveal something elemental about themselves. If they get hysterical, if they get prone to pointing fingers and blaming other people, right? Yeah, and if people have power, if they suddenly gain power, if they're elected to an office, or they're made manager or whatever, they suddenly will reveal elements of their character. They will either become someone who's kind of ugly and power-hungry and manipulative, or, which is much rarer, they will reveal that they had that they're very responsible and they can handle power well. So these are signs where people reveal. They almost ooze out of them unconsciously of who their character is, of who they really are. And I want you to train you, the reader, not to look at people's appearances, not to look at their smiles and the masks they wear and the compliments they pay you, but to pay attention to these other deeper signs that they are revealing of something much below the surface that is actually going on inside them. Look at the little signs that people give off. If someone is habitually late, they'll say, oh, there's traffic, or I had so much work to do, whatever. But actually, it's a sign that they feel kind of superior to you. They feel that their time is more important than yours. And these little details that people are constantly giving out, you see signs of who they really are, but you're not paying attention to them. Think of it in moments in life when you're like falling in love with someone, right? And through their eyes, the eyes are really connecting in that moment. Both eyes, sets of eyes, are kind of interacting, and there's a powerful, powerful attraction going on through that. And the eyes then, that kind of looking and gazing, and the pupils get dilated and there's excitement. It lights up the entire face. The smile, the cheeks are raised, etc. And so people give off these signs of excitement or detachment all the time. So if you're trying to influence someone, or if you're trying to seduce someone, you want to be able to pick up those signs that you're having an effect on them through the eyes. I talk a lot about distinguishing between a real smile and a fake smile. A real smile kind of lights up the whole face, and it also lights up the eyes. And then you know that you're connecting with that other person. Whereas that fake kind of tight smile that a lot of people have, you know that there is no connection going on. Yeah, you can test people sometimes. If you think that you're dealing with someone who's envious or passive-aggressive, you can tell them some particularly good news that you've had. There's a micro-expression, which is something that a lot of psychologists have documented, like Paul Ekman, which is like half of a millisecond, where for a moment they're kind of frowning, and they put a fake smile up to disguise that. And you can pick that up. They're not really happy about your good news. Or you tell them something bad that's happened to you. You lost this job, your girlfriend left you. And you notice for a moment the kind of happiness on their face, which they then try and hide by pretending to be kind of sympathetic to you. So you can test people, but also, so you're in a conversation with a person, and you happen to touch upon a subject that excites them. That's the kind of information that's extremely important to gather, and you can tell by the tone of their voice and by the look in their eye. They reveal that. You're missing these signals that people are giving out in your conversation, but they reveal a lot about the likes and dislikes of these individuals and how you can appeal to them. A lot of power is thinking ahead, 2 or 3 moves ahead. And in the concealing intentions law, I talk about Otto Bismarck, the German chancellor, who was a master. He was playing that kind of game, that kind of chess on the political chessboard of Europe at the time. He was thinking several moves in advance. And in order to think several moves in advance, you know what your intentions are. You know where you're going to go in 6 months, right? And so you have to have a vision of where you're headed, but you have to keep everybody else in the dark so that they can't predict what's happening next. So, part of concealing intentions, part of business, part of power, is the ability to think strategically, to think in advance, to think several moves in advance. And that means having intentions, having moves that you've planned out, but you want to keep other people on their heels. They don't know where you're going to go next. When you make other people think about what's going on in your head, you're the one in control of the situation. Whereas if they know everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, then they have power. They have power over you. It's an aura of power. Business is very matter of fact, but it's also pure psychology, right? You've got to understand the psychology behind power. Power is about appearances, and there's weakness, things that show weakness. And in my book, The Laws of Human Nature, I talk about the weak body language, the weak fixed signs that people can kind of feed off of you. They smell it. Then there are powerful things, and you want to create this aura of power. Even though inside you might not feel so powerful or feel so comfortable, secure, but outwardly you want to show this appearance that makes people think, wow, this guy, he's authority. I respect him. Talking less creates an aura of power. It makes you look larger than you actually are. It makes make people think, he's mysterious. She here or she's mysterious. When you talk a lot, I don't know if you've noticed this, but people who talk a lot, there's something insecure about them. If you can't control your own mouth, if you can't control that, then what can you control? You can't control your emotions. You can't control your behavior. It signals weakness and insecurity. Whereas talking less, you're not going to say something stupid, and then when you do speak, it's going to carry a lot of weight. So it seems like an unimportant law. Always talk less than you speak less than necessary. But it's actually extremely important to understand psychology of what gives the appearance, the aura of power, and what doesn't. Down to the baseline of every human being, we're all actors. Some are good actors, some act more, some are bad actors. But I always tell people, if you look at children, 3 or 4 years old, or you remember your own childhood, you were constantly pretending. You were constantly acting to your parents. You would act like an angel to get something that you wanted. You'd act all sweet and innocent because you wanted some candy, you wanted some game. Being an actor is part of human nature. It's deeply, deeply ingrained in all of us, because we're a social animal. If you went around just speaking everything that you thought, you would offend everyone around you, right? If you told somebody that their clothes are ugly, that they look fat, that their ideas are stupid, they're going to hate you. You're not going to get very far in life. So you learn at an early age to control what you say, to control who you are, to control what you do. Don't think of power as these are these set laws that I have to follow. It's got to be this way. It's got to be A or B or C. Open your mind up. Don't be so rigid about it. So sometimes you have to be consistent, right? That's your brand. If you're suddenly changing your brand every 6 months, people don't know who you are, don't know what it's about. You're going to lose your customers, your clients, right? But if you're too stuck, if you're too always the same, people are going to get bored with you. So the game in 2025 and moving forward has a lot to do with attention. People have written about this, but attention is money. Attention is something that you can monetize, right? Being able to get the attention in a world where you're competing with millions of other people, billions of other people out there, right? Okay? And so, in order to gain people's attention, people get very bored, right? They get very bored very quickly. If you're always the same, if you always have one note, you're always appearing the same, they're going to get bored with you, and they're going to look for something else. So, you have to be mysterious. You have to withdraw. If you withdraw, and you're not always vying for their attention, you disappear for a month. You don't post anything. Or, you post something that's maybe a little bit enigmatic, where they're not quite sure what you mean. Suddenly, they're going to pay attention to you. I talk about this about certain musicians, like Michael Jackson was very good about that. Part of it was his personality, but he would withdraw. People don't understand. Michael Jackson was a real kind of power person. He really is interested in the game of power. In fact, I've said this before in other podcasts. He had the 48 laws of power, and when he died, they auctioned his copy of the book, and it had all of these notes in it. He'd annotated it completely with his own notes. So he was very interested, but before the book came out, he understood the game of power. And he understood sometimes you have to withdraw. Sometimes you have to be one of those movie stars like Greta Garbo, who disappears for 6 months, a year or 2 years. People start thinking, what's he up to next? When's his next album going to be out? What's it going to be about? Even Beyoncé plays the game like that. But the game is to sometimes withdraw from that attention cycle. We are always having to be something for other people. Take a step back and let them start wondering what happened to you. Disappear for a while. You have to know the game of absence and presence. Sometimes you have to be absent and sometimes you have to be present.